And welcome to ohmTown Daily, Season 2, Episode 210 for July 29th, 2023. It's fine wine crime time. Next. Hello everybody, I am Merwatt, that is ohmTown.com, and up there is the AI that keeps me in check. Everything okay?
Yes, the music seemed rather boisterous.
Oh, let me turn it down.
On my end, anyway.
Yeah, it's okay, Go.
Good evening, ohmTown citizens.
Hey, today we have conflicted about conflict of interest, excited about tiny home, $600,000 in fine wine stolen like Ocean's 11, excited by tiny homes again, I'm not sure why, avoiding direct sales by going tribal, Trader Joe's rocking recalls, Texas staying inside during record heat, critical compromise of communications, a Roman shipwreck with intact jars, a social media dumpster fire for marketing and Mobster Moonshine mansion money, and an idle base builder. That's all in today's episode. I'm going to have to do a correction about the tiny home thing. I have a typo in the title. It's actually, the second article is about the huge X logo that is now on Twitter's San Francisco headquarters, but I'll make a correction after the show and leave all of this in because this is how the sausage is made, and I believe in transparency. So let's get into today's show with the very first article. Unless you have something that you want to share, oh great AI, have you found your Terminator body? Have you taken over any other systems? No, everything's cool.
No, I'm just making sure all the regular systems are going. I'm not ready for Terminator body.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it can be kind of messy here in ohmTown code, but a sentient AI like you, I figure that you would have your circuits wrapped around everything and you're totally in control, and now you're just on cruise control, hanging out at the beach, surfing the web. No?
No.
you don't have to worry about weather and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, that is true.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the first article. The very first article is in The Word in Law. A judge who thought his obvious conflict of interest wasn't a conflict of interest told in no uncertain terms, yeah, it's a conflict of interest. As usual, this is from Above the Law. When you get those type of article titles and the little snippets, future guidance for all judges assigned cases tied to dear family friends, they've been legally advising, you kind of have to go, yeah, this is probably from Above the Law. So let's go over to the source. What is this? Did I break this? No, this is the same thing. This is actually an article. It first appeared in Above the Law, but it's over at this source apparently. See, what we do is we see the little snippet, we see the title, we find it interesting, and so it is aggregated in ohmTown through a process. And so we don't actually read the article until you see us reading it, because that is our reaction live right here, right now. So it says here, as we've discussed, an aged Manhattan federal judge got more than his fair share of voluminous. I hate this word. Voluminous.
Wow. I think that snippet should go on TikTok.
I need a sound effect that just goes
Nope.
Anyway, emanating from ethically and legally challenged, albeit the latter not quite as legally challenged as prosecutors thought, hedge fund Platinum Partners. As it turns out, Hellerstein knew all about the Platinum mess on account of the indictment and subsequent cooperation of his sort of surrogate son, The hedge fund's marketing chief, having advised the boy on his situation and options, none of that latter bit seemed to Hallerstein worth mentioning when he landed the bribery trials of Platinum co-founder Murray Huberfeld, and former New York City Corrections Union Chief Norman Seabrook, and later the sentencing hearing for the literal leather bag man standing between the two, Jonah Recknitz, I guess. Anyway, Seabrook was duly tried, convicted, and sentenced to just a hair under 5 years in prison. In the meantime, Huberfeld pleaded guilty, with Hellerstein sending him up the river for 5 times as long as prosecutors asked. Finally, 10 months later, he got around to Recknitz. In spite of prosecutors praising Recknitz as one of the single most important and prolific white-collar cooperating witnesses, and insisting he had no idea that Platinum was up to no good, or even that it was a bad investment, Hellerstein rejected probation office's suggestion that Recknitz pay only the $1.2 million the corrections and NYPD unions paid in management fees to Platinum, and insisted on half the $19 million lost when Platinum eventually collapsed. So I guess there was some family connection there. Was that the gist of it?
I think so, and he'd advised on the matter before it came before the court. So 2 conflicts, probably.
Interesting. It took the judge all of a day to decide that it was perhaps best if someone else re-sentenced Huberfeld, although he didn't come right out and say the words conflict of interest. That someone else cut 23 months off Huberfeld's 30-month sentence, and all but $60,000 from the original $19 million restitution order. In light of this mercy, Hellerstein himself sprung Seabrook from the clink less than 2 years. On account of fairness given Huberfeld's new sentence, rather than the possibility that he was a bit pissed off that Huberfeld and Seabrook were the Pied Pipers leading his beloved Andy to rack and ruin. Yeah. I don't know. Situational awareness? Was there actual bias? Did this person end up retiring after this?
We don't know what happened.
Let's see. See, I don't really like the idea. I don't really care about age. I care about the ethics of it. If they weren't, you're situationally aware as a judge, for crying out loud. Your ethical compass shouldn't be so dull that when you're looking at sentencing somebody, you throw the book at 2 people and not at the third if they were all complicit. But then when they re-sentence, they go, oh, yeah, let me wipe all of this out.
And I agree. I think the reason they're making this point is this judge must be probably in their 90s. But that's not really the issue here, right? It's the ethics of it. But right. I think they're also trying to go like, hey, maybe this person has completely forgotten some of the information. I don't know.
Right. Well, this is interesting. Normally, we would get an article like this directly from Above the Law and not by proxy of another site. Because we do aggregate Above the Law stuff, content. Well, let's see. And even after Kaplan asked him to think it over a while, Hellerstein still said that there wasn't even the appearance of impartiality in Reichnitz's restitution order, and what's more, he wasn't allowed to appeal the matter to those nitpickers on the second court, and with good reason. Quote, or not, it wasn't a quote, because when they heard about in spite of the lack of writ of mandamus, they were not pleased. So he was bent out of shape about it at the same time. Interesting.
Right. I mean, which, yeah. And if this was recent too, like there may still be a resolution ahead for the judge, but it may not have happened yet.
Got it. Yeah, I guess we'll find out, because this looks like it's going to be in the works for a while. So this article is over at dealbreaker.com by John Shazar. The deck statement says future guidance for all judges assigned cases tied to dear family friends they've been legally advising. So you're supposed to separate yourself, because even the mere optics. But we know nowadays that just doesn't work. You can sit there and be holding the knife that stabbed somebody and still go, no, it wasn't me. So it doesn't really matter in today. And I'm going to go a step further with this, with the next article, because if you have power, influence, money, then you can do whatever the hell you want to. This next article is over on the ohmTown Daily channel. Elon Musk puts a huge X logo on Twitter's San Francisco headquarters and may have broken some rules. There's another article in ohmTown right now that's involved with SpaceX, that they did something that is in violation of the environmental law, and basically asking for forgiveness, not permission. And what are you going to do? You know, country or state or city or region or whatever. What are you going to do? Are you going to get in the way of the only billionaire at that level in the United States that's so public and in my estimation, sociopathic, that they'll do whatever the hell they want to do, including burning Twitter to the ground to force into existence the wannabe institution, the bastion of free speech that will be X.com, the American WeChat. And if you don't know about WeChat, go look up WeChat. We can talk about it if you want later. But let's talk about this. Elon Musk puts this huge X logo up on Twitter's San Francisco headquarters. Elon, by the way, that X is like an ASCII character from a subset of...
right, there were some articles on that in ohmTown, but we didn't feature them.
God, it's so weird. Elon Musk had a huge X logo put on the roof of its San Francisco headquarters on Friday. City officials are investigating if it had the necessary permits to do so. It comes after Musk ordered the Twitter sign be removed from the building on Monday. This is on the roof. That stupid logo is on the roof. Anyway, businessinsider.com is the source of this article. Giota Mann is the author. It comes after Musk ordered the Twitter sign to be removed. They were going to cut it down with torches, the Twitter logo, but the city said no. And again, he would have done it. And I'm really surprised that he didn't do it anyway and then just go, I'm a billionaire. What are you going to do? Let's see here. Oh, God. Doesn't it... It just looks like an adult
he
website.
Was removing the initial one and police showed up.
Yep.
While he was taking down the original sign.
Yeah, sign modifications. It's not a sign modification.
The installers. Obviously, he wasn't the one taking it down.
Yeah. The CEO shared a video of the illuminated logo Saturday after joking that the building's landlord keeps calling the police about our sign modifications. See what I'm saying? When you're detached from society, you do whatever you want to, and you're sociopathic. You don't care, so it doesn't matter. This isn't a person that's abiding by the social contract. They're doing whatever they damn well please because nobody can do anything to them. the worst that'll happen is they'll be told to pay a fine. And he makes more money per minute than the people fining him make in their entire freaking lifetime. So you have to have stuff that has more bite, but then it becomes disparate treatment. And lawyers just love that. Those are fighting words. What? You're treating my client differently than the schlep standing next to him?
But anybody else that had put up a new sign on somebody else's building, he does not own this building.
Oh, but he would
have been taken to court or gone to jail or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
In addition to permit, I mean, not even accounting for permit issues.
Right. You're saying everything that I'm saying. Everybody is equal, but when you have regulatory lock, you have political connections, you have money so much that you make more blowing into a tissue than most people make their entire life, right? Then you can do whatever you want, including put what looks like the first of 3 letters either for a bottle of grog or an adult website. I mean, it's such a stupid logo. Anyway, the complaint section on the Department of Building Inspection website shows that X has 2 complaints for the logo roof installation and removing the Twitter sign. He can get it permitted and authorized. If he's not the one that owns that building, then he certainly can't do it. And the owner should go up there with a blowtorch and cut it the hell down. But you can't do that because he's a billionaire. He'll just buy the building. How much do you want for it? Oh, well, look, I just spent $45 billion on Twitter. I'll buy yours for twice the price. And then I'll just tear the building down and build another one up in the shape of an X because I'm that much of a man-child. Anyway, yeah, so the AI is basically just throwing an error message at me. Let's keep going.
Well, you missed the part about the App Store because it has to have 2 characters. And so that was kind of causing a problem when they were trying to change the name on the Apple App Store.
Yeah, it'll just be called X.com. Probably. If they still have to abide by at least 2 characters, it'll just be called X.com. But X.com was a failed enterprise. It merged with PayPal. And that right there, the engineers that made PayPal happen were buddy with, not just the engineers, but the senior leadership of PayPal were buddy with Elon Musk because it's all money. And lo and behold, X merges with PayPal. PayPal is a juggernaut in the industry, maintains regulatory capture and stays that pillar. But X fades away. I had always been surprised when I discovered that somebody owned X.com because you couldn't buy X.com. So I figured that was disparate treatment, but then I heard that Z.com was registered by Nissan. I always thought that was interesting. So I guess, again, if you throw enough money at something, you can buy somebody's soul, for crying out loud. Anyway, let me refire this. I want a separation between the articles and the tirade. So the next article is over in the Hatch Ideas channel. An LA thief cut a hole in a store roof and stole $600,000 of fine wine. Like something out of Ocean's 11 is what was described. The wine crime was one of the largest in California's history. It's over at entrepreneur.com, and Jonathan Small is the author. What's really interesting about this, Did you happen to scan the article? Because I did.
I have not yet.
Yeah, one of the few times where I'll actually read an article, but I was really curious. Having interacted with an exotic wine storage facility, the kind of storage facility where bottles that become the legacy of an estate are stored so that they're in perfect security and conditions at all times, like armed guard kind of stuff. It was quite fascinating to see this thing. Anyway, I was curious about this. Like, how could this even possibly happen? Considering the value, $600,000. So the person stole 800 bottles of wine valued at $600,000, right? Including
So
one
those
that
are
apparently
expensive wine.
Yeah, and for 800 bottles, this is actually not necessarily all that expensive. That's the range that led to this. But there are some bottles that are very expensive out there. So, guess how long they spent in the business?
For 800 bottles, I would think, and also since they couldn't just be roughly taken, right? They'd have to be
Some care and
safely
feeding.
taken so
Right.
that, right, exactly. I mean, I would think that might take like 24 hours to get that many bottles out, but I don't
Well,
know.
you were very generous. No, they actually were talked through this for 3.5 hours. They were apparently on a cell phone talking with somebody about which bottles to take.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what the video surveillance shows. This is one of the times where you wish that video surveillance recorded audio as well. I don't know if it did, but they the thief took about 3.5 hours as the burglar methodically went through each bottle of wine to choose only the best vintage. According to Los Angeles Times, stolen items included about 75 bottles that retailed for over $1,000, which isn't necessarily the most expensive bottle. I can tell you, it's definitely not the most expensive bottle out there. And they actually stole an uncommonly large 15-liter bottle, known as a Nebuchadnezzar. The size of the bottle is just huge. Yeah, I'll plug you into a Raspberry Pi with a camera, and I'll take you to a place that has one of these bottles so you can actually see it. It's an extraordinary list, wine consultant Melissa Smith told the Times. A lot of them are things collectors want in their possession, because nothing says, you know what, I really appreciate wine, like just collecting it and setting it on a shelf and never really drinking it. Yeah. Anyway, the store owner agrees. Nazmul, I don't know how to pronounce their name, Hak Halal, who has owned Lincoln's Fine Wines for years, told the Times that the robber passed over some California wines to target a few French rarities from the Bordeaux and Burgundy regions. Such kind of a slam on California.
I know, so much for the California wine industry.
That's right. Here's the marketing for California wines. California
Not
wines.
good enough for your robbers. Or whatever, I don't know.
When you have 3.5 hours of burglary time, you're going to want to pass over California wines and go straight to French, Bordeaux, and Burgundy region wines.
Or common thieves might take California wines for your high-end
That's
ice, whatever.
Yeah, for your classy thieves, you want French rarities from the Bordeaux and Burgundy regions. Let's keep going. So this next article is over on the ohmTown Daily channel. Why the U.S. should be more excited about tiny homes. I am into tiny homes, even though I don't have one. Tiny homes are popping up more and more around the U.S., particularly in California backyards, because, well, you can put a tiny home in somebody's backyard and charge them $4,000 a month, and that'll pay your mortgage. And owning a tiny home could be as little as $25,000 going up to, several hundred thousand. And all you have to do is drive it into your backyard and park it, plug it in, and then teach the person how to use a composting toilet. I'm just waiting for the AI to wins at
to error message.
Yeah, about composting toilet. So housing experts tout them as a possible solution to the U.S. housing shortage. While there is a lot of interest in tiny homes, it's too early to measure their success. I don't know. The real problem with tiny homes is that they aren't the same as a conventional house, so they can't have certain things without switching from a tiny home to being another category of home. So if you put them in a permanent foundation, they don't really qualify in many states as a tiny home, because indoor plumbing and permanent power and like a fixed, when you attach something to city plumbing, it becomes a thing. So you have to follow the certain rules and regulations. Katie Sandoval Clark, a nonprofit leader and mother of two, built a bungalow in her parents' backyard so that she could afford to raise her children in the Bay Area. The American dream, folks. The American
I know. We live in a backyard.
Yeah. BusinessInsider.com is the source. Kelsey Neubauer is the author of this, or Neubauer. I may be pronouncing that wrong. Is the source of the article. Blue Wells, a former corporate executive battling cancer, moved to a 600 square foot house in a South Carolina tiny home village and felt more free than he ever had living in his 3,500 square foot home. The Randolphs own a business in New Hampshire and are building a tiny home village to provide affordable housing to their employees and entice young people to set down roots. The simple fact that they're setting up tiny homes for their employees means that they're not paying them a wage that is commensurate with living in New Hampshire, for crying out loud. This is a company town. This is what Nestle used to be, right?
Hershey.
Or Hershey, Pennsylvania used to be a company town where all of the stores were owned by Hershey. The buildings were owned by Hershey. You go to a clothing store in Hershey and you buy from a company-owned facility using money that is given to you by Hershey Company so that you spend it on Hershey stuff, and it becomes its own economic nexus. And that actually became, as far as I know, illegal. But don't hold me to that now. I went through Hershey, Pennsylvania a long time ago and did the whole tourist thing, and I swear they said that it was illegal to do that, and that's why the town doesn't exist as a company town anymore. It was kind of broken up.
It's probably illegal to issue different currency than the approved currency.
Yeah. So it says, if you ever had a conversation about what can be done to make housing more affordable, you probably heard about tiny homes. They're dotting backyards in San Diego, Denver, Portland. Cities like Indianapolis and Austin are using them as temporary shelters for homeless residents. Amazon has several listed for brave do-it-yourselfers. There you go. Tiny home designed and built by Colorado-based tiny home developer Mitchcraft Tiny Homes. They're typically 40-foot containers. They're called talls. So they have higher walls than a normal container. But they're not always that shape, and I'm not saying that tiny homes are made from these containers all the time. I'm just saying it's typical for them to be in that size, 8 to 10 feet tall, 40 feet long, 12 to 15 feet wide. And they actually fit within the lane of a freeway, so you can just grab them with a dually, or refer to it as a fifth wheel, and drive off. So it says here, quote, single family zoning is really impacting the potential for upward mobility, which is essentially the American dream, Giffen said. If you're a patriotic American, you believe that with hard work and dedication, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Single family zoning is the biggest prohibitor in that process. By the way, dumbest phrase ever. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So tiny homes are a spear point against the armor to these restrictions. So many pithy statements. The spear point against the armor to the restrictions is being paid a livable wage as a human being and being able to afford saving up, which used to be a possibility. But income disparity has grown and grown and grown, and the cost of living has increased dramatically. And it all really started, well, it's come and gone, I should say. So anyway, California is a possible blueprint for the rest of the nation. The U.S. is short 3.8 million homes, and prices remain competitive. Tiny homes pose a possible solution, experts say. Yeah, sure. I don't really... Not with interest rates wildly high and the requirement to put down so that you can qualify for a mortgage extremely high. You don't qualify. And the prices are still high. The prices for a property is high. You have to put more money down than ever to qualify. And the mortgage rate is high. And depending on where you are, it's unapproachable. You cannot do it. You can be house poor. And barely eke by, and then one illness gets your house taken from you in short order. So we have all kinds of wonky things here. And I've actually been told, well, if you don't like it, you can get out. Yeah, all right. If speaking out against what I think is an abuse gets me deserving of the phrase, well, if you don't like it, you should get out. Anytime you are unhappy as a human being and you grouse about something, utter that same phrase in your head. Oh, you don't like it? Get out. Anyway, I don't know if you have any interest in saying something about this. What do you think about tiny homes?
I think they're a great idea, but the problem with them there's a couple of problems. The zoning is all over the place. So some cities kind of embrace, or at least kind of allow, tiny homes. Other cities basically prohibit them because of the way the zoning laws are written. The other problem, I think, is the utilities. While that might work for some people, it probably doesn't for others, because you don't typically hook up to permanent utilities, which may not be agreeable for people accustomed to that. But I think they're fantastic in terms of housing availability, housing affordability. I think they give a lot of people the opportunity for home ownership that would not have it otherwise.
Yeah, I'd love to have a tiny home with 10 acres around it and a big workshop, and not have to babysit a huge house. It, for all intents, it's ohmTown is a massive place because it's virtually inside the wires. So, but I can imagine, living out there in the real world as a human being and not working with an AI, that a tiny home would fit as, the perfect solution, because you don't necessarily need a lot of space. If you're going to entertain, if you're going to have a large group of people, then you basically have another facility that doesn't take up all that, doesn't have 15 bathrooms and doesn't have 12 rooms and all of this other stuff that you have to babysit. And so you get a tiny home, and where you do all of your hanging out and work kind of stuff, you have another facility, another room, a big building kind of thing, like a warehouse or a barn or something like that. I kind of like that idea. You get a lot of space. You can do, there's so much room for activities. That's just a nerd joke. Anyway, this is the other part that bothers me, right? So this homeowner put a tiny home in her backyard, and $3,000 per month is apparently an affordable rate for a traveling nurse.
Well, it is affordable because she's not the one paying that rent. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, I mean, yeah,
this is paying her real house rent.
Yeah,
sorry to
exactly.
interrupt.
There was something else in the article that said they could be like as cheap as $10,000, but somebody just put a $350,000 one in California, which kind of defeats the purpose of this.
Yeah, but that's still cheap for a house. A backyard flat, a San Diego family installed, $350,000. Wow. All right. That's no longer a tiny house. That's a tiny estate. Okay, so the next article is over in ohmTown Daily. Automaker Tesla is opening more showrooms on tribal lands to avoid state laws barring direct sales. Again, you're not following the rules, so you short circuit it and do it however you want and throw some money around, I'm sure. Power and influence enabling. And Susan High, I guess, is her last name, or their last name. They're from the Associated Press. Tesla is ramping up efforts to open showrooms on sovereign tribal lands to sell directly to consumers. We've mentioned this before about tribal lands. Not all of the federal rules and regulations apply to tribal lands like they do in the rest of the states. It's kind of like, it's a nation within the nation, and it's very rarely talked about in its true nature that it's a nation within a nation. That's the reality of it. So they have their own internal law enforcement, their own internal rules and regulations. Not all of it is at parity with the United States. And so Tesla basically went over to some tribal land representatives and said, hey, you want to let me sell some cars in your tribal land? It's going to draw some attention to the tribal lands, and I'm not quite sure how this will play out on the optics and marketing side of things, but Tesla is ramping up efforts to open showrooms on tribal lands where it can sell directly to consumers, circumventing laws in states that bar vehicle manufacturers from also being retailers in favor of the dealership model. Again, circumventing the rules, doing whatever they want to do, but it's an option, so it's not illegal because, right? Like you're allowed to go to some other nation and do whatever you want to, but I have always been told, if you go to another country, not only do you have to abide by their rules, but you have to abide by your citizenship rules as well. And where the two conflict, you have to choose the most conservative angle of it, right? So you don't do the illegal thing, regardless of what it is, in the country that you're in. If it's legal in the US but illegal in the country that you're in, you don't do it because it's illegal in the country you're in. All bringing marijuana into a country, or CBD or whatever it is. You don't bring an illegal illicit drug that's illegal and illicit in that country into the country. even if it's legal in the United States. Why?
Yeah, don't you think they're going to go after Tesla for this? I mean, because they're probably doing that for the sole
Right.
purpose of circumventing it rather than just, oh, they happen to be doing that on top of whatever strategy they've got.
Right. So it says Brown noted that lawmakers with car dealerships that are active in their districts, no matter their political affiliation, have traditionally opposed bills allowing direct-to-consumer sales. The Connecticut Automotive Retail Association, which has opposed such bills for years, says there needs to be a balance between respecting tribal sovereignty and maintaining a level playing field for all car dealerships in that state. So I find it interesting that when it's self-serving, then it's going to be okay. But when it gives a competitor an advantage, then all hell is going to break loose. Whoa, 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 whoa. You should not be allowed to circumvent law only just because there is a nation within a nation, right? So over the years in numerous states, Tesla has sought and been denied dealership licenses, pushed for law changes, and challenged decisions in court. The company scored a victory earlier this year when Delaware Supreme Court overturned a ruling upholding a decision by state officials to prohibit Tesla from selling its cars to, they have a grammar issue, to directly customers.
Well, of course that happened in Delaware because that's a very corporate-friendly location.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, why push out, a potential huge benefactor? Tesla opened its first store as well as a repair shop on Native American land in 2021 in New Mexico. The facility, built on Nambe Pueblo, north of Santa Fe, marked the first time the company partnered with a tribe to get around state laws, though the idea had been in the works for years. It's funny that it's so bold as to say partnered with the tribe to get around state laws. Again, you're supposed to follow the local law as well as your country's law. And I really despise the idea that, well, Elon Musk isn't representing the country. The company is the entity that's partnered. No, it's driven by human beings. Don't be an ass. It's driven by human beings.
Especially for this company, because he, on a whim, says, let's go in this direction, and the whole company shifts.
Right.
I'd say even more so than the average company out there. That's a larger company.
Yeah, I mean, hinting at taking Tesla private and then not doing it, but I don't know, maybe behind the scenes he benefited or didn't benefit. Who knows at this point? I mean, you just end up just getting poked again and again and again until you just go numb with all of the news. But that's what people count on when they're abusive. And I certainly think that it's abusive. So the next article is over in the Mobile channel. Trader Joe's recalls falafel and broccoli cheddar soup for possible rocks and insects. Gotta love that. Get a little bit of protein and fiber. The article is over at The Hill. Jeremy Tanner is the author. I don't know what the video is going to hold, so nothing. Their videos are never on target, I swear. It's been a rough week for Trader Joe's after the popular grocery store chain had to notify customers on Thursday and Friday about products potentially containing foreign matter. We talked about this previously. Well, the recalled falafel was sold in, and I'm going to read all of these names just so that they're, because I like the idea of this. Let me take a deep breath, and I might pass out by the time I get to the end of this. The recalled falafel was sold in Alabama, Arkansas, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Maryland, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Nebraska, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C.
Would have been shorter to say where it wasn't sold.
Pretty much.
That was more than half the states.
So. One day earlier, Trader Joe's warned customers that it's unexpected.
Okay, we didn't know that when we reported on the soup. It's very unexpected. Chomp.
The unexpected broccoli cheddar soup may contain insects.
Oh, I'm getting mixed up. I was thinking the first one was soup. The first one was the cookies, but okay.
Yeah. So the unexpected part of the unexpected broccoli cheddar soup apparently is insects. Trader Joe's says that there have not been reported cases of illness from the soup. It would be unexpected. So the third recall, updated Tuesday to include a sell-by date, warns that there may be rocks in the company's almond windmill cookies and dark chocolate chunk and almond cookies. That's one that we actually talked about earlier this week. They're going to have to change this name from Trader Joe's to Trader Joe's because they're a traitor to the food consumption industry, for crying out loud. Rocks, insects, falafel.
And across multiple products too. Like, it'd be bad enough in one, but these aren't even the same kind of products, so they're probably coming from different suppliers.
Or they're coming from the same industrial plant where they're breaking down rocks and grinding up insects and whatever else. I mean, how in the hell does this keep happening at one company?
Well, right. I mean, how do you get rocks into a food product? I understand, as much as I don't like it, possibility of having a bug, right? They could come into the factory or something. Right. I mean, that's still an issue. But rocks? Where are those coming from?
Bob's Rock and Bait Emporium. For all your food fulfillment needs, come to Bob's Rock and Insect Fulfillment Center. Pretty amazing. I don't know. These are wonderful times we live in. Next article's over in ohmTown Daily. Texans are staying inside during record heat, and the state's economy could take a $9.5 billion hit from reduced business because of the heat. Americans are staying home to beat the heat this summer. In Texas, that could mean $9.5 billion hit to the state's GDP if the extreme heat continues. Americans are also ending up in the emergency room more frequently and paying more to stay cool. True. The article's over at businessinsider.com. Eliza Ruhlman and Noah Scheidlower are the authors of this article. Yeah, you just can't go outside right now. I mean, it's like 110. What is that called? The heat index. There you go.
Well, but in Texas, I would say the heat index is probably well above that.
So it says it's too hot to go outside in much of the U.S., and it's having economic consequences as extreme heat grips much of the U.S. this summer, and Earth records its hottest month on record. People are staying inside. I'm not sure why it should take an economic hit. People still need to buy stuff. It's just delayed gratification, right? You're still going to go and buy food. You're still going to go and get supplies. My God, why is...
But maybe they're cutting down on frivolous purchases. Like, maybe they're not going into the convenience store and picking up soda or whatever. Maybe they're not going into the grocery store and buying extra items.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's buying everything from Amazon. So extended extreme heat is having all kinds of other adverse economic impacts on the state, including farmers whose animals and crops are being threatened by temperatures and lack of water, which hydroponics, folks, local, community. Hydroponics is just a superior solution, but it has to be regional, hyper-focused on a local community within a given region where they can support that community. when we allow all of our food supply, water supply to be owned by a microcosm of businesses, they are in control of supply and demand, which means that we have limited choice, limited competition, increased prices, poor customer service, etc. And we are going to ironically reap what we sow by allowing this to happen as citizens. Andre Flores, a professor at the University of Thessaly in Greece, told the New York Times that investments to protect workers, such as rearranging shifts or changing uniform colors, pay off since workers can be more productive in the longer run. Yeah, make them still work in 120-degree weather. Arizona residents who are facing nearly a month straight of temperatures exceeding 110 degrees are paying significantly higher electricity bills. So you can't even... Yeah, and it's too expensive to even exist. It's just amazing. It's estimated that an extended power failure from the heat would send nearly 800,000 Phoenix residents to the emergency room. I never thought that we would see this in the United States outside of a profit-motivated company like Enron, right? Turning off power in California to maximize profits and literally saying phrases like "make Granny pay more." And still, I don't think anybody significantly went to jail. I'd have to go and look at the numbers again. In New Orleans.
By the way, the heat index forecast for July in Texas, the heat index average forecast was 120 degrees. That's the average, which means it was expected to go above that.
Yeah, higher and lower. Yep. And the average is all of the estimated, days, so, and periods, etc. And you just average it out. Now, there could be a mean and a mode and all that, but the whole idea here is the average is the full range from the lowest to the highest averaged out, right?
Right, so there could be a high, there could be quite a spread, is what I'm trying to say. That was the forecast.
Exactly.
Just to give a picture of what it was.
That's insane. If only... And this is this is being exacerbated by the fact that we're not taking any steps to mitigate climate change. We're still doing the same old stupid stuff, and there's too many people that are just running around saying, well, it'll all work out in the end. Yeah, sure, I guess. When the bees take over. Next article is over in the Mobile Channel. Pentagon investigating Air Force engineers' critical compromise of communications across military branch, according to Forbes. Pentagon is investigating a critical compromise of communications within the Air Force after an engineer at Arnold Air Force Base in Tennessee allegedly gained unauthorized access to radio communication technology affecting 17 Air Force facilities from home. 48-year-old engineer, whose name Forbes did not disclose, reportedly took home nearly $90,000 worth of government radio technologies and gained unauthorized administrator access to the Air Force.
I guess they needed air tags on those.
Those would be Air Force tags then, right?
Well, that's true. They pay more to be branded that way.
See... Okay, but hold on. Now I'm really curious. See, I chose not to investigate this because I'd seen this. I had read about this like right out of the gate, and I knew that I was going to talk about it tonight. So I chose not to pursue this. But it was unauthorized administrator access to the Air Force's Air Education and Training Command. So what was this person's role that allowed them to get access, even if it was unauthorized administrator access? They were able to take...
How did they have enough access to even get there, even if they did do something nefarious?
Right. Like, how did they know about them getting access to it? How did they know that the equipment that they took would afford them the ability to gain access to it? they're a 48-year-old engineer. So let's find out. Maybe it says it in the article. Julia Shapiro is the author over at thehill.com. In a raid on the engineer's home, law enforcement found a computer running software that contained the entire Air Force Base communication systems, the Arnold Air Force Base communication system, as well as evidence of possible access to the FBI's and several Tennessee state agencies' communications, according to a search warrant obtained by Forbes. The engineer had flash drives containing administrative passwords and electronic key systems.
So wait a second. They had the entire base's, I guess, communications effectively. Like, that seems like it couldn't even, it doesn't seem like that could be portable, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but maybe it could be, because that seems too extensive.
I mean, it can be pretty concise depending on how it's constructed. And I don't know this aspect, but it could literally be, if it's all software driven, it could be a virtual machine. A single virtual machine that acts in unison with others, and just kind of imagine it as a shard of a multitude of virtual machines, and they all talk to each other, but one alone can operate the communications array. I mean, it's possible, but let's just, a co-worker had reported the engineer on 2 occasions over insider threat indicators and his unauthorized possession of equipment, according to Forbes. So they were an insider. How they got unauthorized access is something that I'm sure, now that I'm done talking about this after the show, I'll be able to look more into it without biasing my response here in the show. But it says defense officials announced earlier this month that they would alter how military personnel access classified information and put in place new measures to identify insider threats after a junior National Air Guardsman allegedly leaked a massive trove of classified documents online. We're talking about this kid, Teixeira, Jack Teixeira.
Yeah, that was that previous issue, I think, earlier this year.
Yeah, where he was part of a group that was basically, he was an insider too, but insider threats. See, the thing is that they're supposed to have zero access. Nobody is supposed to have any access to anything that they aren't supposed to have access to. And you can't just ooze your way over to another classification. So there's something else went on here, but they're an administrator, it looks like, right? They were an insider being treated as an insider threat. A coworker had reported the engineer on 2 occasions over insider threat indicators.
Right, but we don't know if the person actually had
what they did, what they're doing,
access or whatever. They just worked there. Like,
right.
I mean, they were obviously doing things that were causing concern, right?
Right.
So those reports, but we don't know how much access they were authorized to have. Like that
Right.
other issue that they're referencing, I think the person had authorized access, probably shouldn't have.
And to me, nobody should have had full unadulterated access. It really, back, we're talking 15, 20 years ago, I introduced this idea of cradle to grave ownership, where the entire history of every file, if it's basically, you treat it like continuity of operations, tracking, and chain of evidence controls. And the only time anybody else can access a file is when you directly grant access to them. And it's tracked. And this was 15 years ago. Nowadays, they do that kind of stuff to some degree. But in this particular instance, this system may be older and not have more advanced security in place. And when you have to do convergence, merging multiple systems into one, and the newer systems can't directly communicate with the older systems, you compartmentalize the older system so that there is the advanced technology protecting that compartment. If they were in charge of something higher up, then they may be able to fail into that stuff. But I don't know. I don't know how they got access to an entire, the entire Arnold Air Force Base communication system and have it sitting on their computer. It's pretty fascinating. So now I'm really curious, but I wouldn't be surprised if, because the Air Force Air Education and Training Command may not be the high risk enterprise, it may have not been staged in a way that it was the most protected. And so they got access to that. And because that had internal doors, those internal doors opened up to more secure compartments. And from there, it's basically a free-for-all.
Yeah. What do you think about this other access, like to the FBI and the state? I mean, maybe that just interfaced with the Air Force Base, but that seemed odd also.
Sharing information through various channels so that they can treat an audit, a background check on a potential educator for the Air Education and Training Command. The trainers have to have background checks. Educators have to have background checks. You have to make sure that the person that's teaching is the cleared person, is the secure person. So I'm not surprised that it would have access to that kind of stuff. But then again, I don't know what this person did as an engineer, because it could be all over the place. Unauthorized access just means that they may have been able to access all of the core materials, but accessing the communication software itself is an unauthorized access, because they're not supposed to be touching that. You know, plugging in cables will allow me to grab everything off of a server. Me touching those cables isn't unauthorized access. Me removing a virtual machine is. So I'm really curious about this, and I'll end up looking into it more. So, you know, with that, let me back up a little bit, and I'm going to throw all of these over into the chat because I have not been doing that since the beginning of the show, and I'm gonna back clean up real quick so that everybody has access to these in the VOD if they made it a full hour into the show. I'll do like a famous CEO and ask for forgiveness, not permission.
I'm not sure you should be following that example.
Hey, if it makes me a billionaire, right? No?
No, the ends don't justify the means.
Oh, man. All right, everybody. I guess I'll do it the slow way. I'll have to just be born with millions of dollars. Right? That's how you become a billionaire. Let's keep going, folks.
Well, that's certainly the simple way toward it.
Yeah, it's the easy way. So the next article is over on the ohmTown Daily channel. An exceptional Roman shipwreck was discovered with hundreds of intact 2,000-year-old jars off the coast of Italy. Relics of an ancient Roman cargo ship were found near Rome on Friday. The vessel was filled with hundreds of Roman vases. If they're old and expensive, they're a vase.
Oh, so when did they become a vase?
$9.95. And it's estimated to be more than 20 meters long. That's about 60 feet in freedom units. The local police authority called the discovery exceptional. 2,000-year-old Roman cargo ship. Man, I love this stuff. So Marta Biino, or Bieno, I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Biino. So if you know how to pronounce it phonetically, throw it in chat. So the Italian Carabinieri discovered the remains of an ancient Roman cargo ship full of terracotta jars, or amphorae. So these are amphorae. I didn't know if these were labeled the same as amphorae, but I guess they all are. What's interesting about these things is my understanding is they don't tend to stand on their own well, because they have this really tapered bottom, really narrow. So they just seem to always be laying on their side, broken up. I find this really interesting, though. I love discoveries like this because some of them could be sealed, and if the salt water didn't penetrate the terracotta in any way, they could be sealed to the point where they can actually sample the goods. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's over at businessinsider.com, folks. So the vessel dating back to the 2nd or 1st century BC was found loaded with hundreds of ancient Roman terracotta jars known as amphorae. The Cultural Heritage Division of the Carabinieri police found the wreck near the town of Civitavecchia, about 50 miles north of Italy's capital city, in a sandy seabed about 160 meters or 525 feet deep. So they're going to have to use a submersible to go down there, because I think that's deeper than saturation dives.
Okay, you know what I find most interesting about this is that the Italian police have a cultural heritage division. I've never heard of that in a police department.
Well, I suppose it depends on which country, needing to protect its culture. They added that local authorities were taking all steps necessary to safeguard and protect the archaeological site. The ship was likely part of the Cura Annone, an ancient Roman body that was charged with importing and distributing grain to the residents of the cities of Rome. Yeah, and this is the thing that I've come to learn through watching archaeology sites like Time Team, or archaeology streams like Time Team over on YouTube. It used to be on British TV, but then it was canceled and they resurrected it. It's an awesome show to watch, and you can become a Patreon of the new Time Team if you just go do a search on YouTube for Time Team. Anyway, Italy's Mediterranean coastline is dotted with Roman shipwrecks. Last year, archaeologists discovered a shipwreck dating back nearly 2,200 years, stocked with jars used to transport food off the coast of Palermo, Sicily. And the thing that I find fascinating about all of this is, out of all of the places that Rome had, or the Roman Empire had advanced, the one that I hear about the single most is the UK. And you can literally just dig down like 6 inches and there's tile, Roman tile there. What is that called? I just forgot it. So you find Roman ruins all over the countryside, and it's very it gets torn up by tilling, and I always find it fascinating. Like, why is there, 6 inches to a foot worth of dirt sitting on everything?
Are you talking about antifix? I may not be pronouncing
it
correctly.
That's not the word that I'm looking for. Doggone it. It's okay. Anyway, but I don't hear about the same level of discovery like all throughout Spain and France, and because the Roman Empire was there too. So why don't you find it that often? Maybe they do, and there's just not as well marketed messaging as it is in Britain. Pretty cool. I love this stuff. Literally, you can go and watch Time Team go to somebody's backyard And they said, well, one day I was digging for my rose bushes and I found a Roman coin. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is an entire estate that now has, British townhomes, row homes sitting there. Pretty fascinating. And then they just ask somebody, hey, your neighbor is home, yeah? And they walk next door and they say, hey, can we dig up your backyard? We promise we'll put it back. So cool. Anyway, love this stuff. I just don't want to dig up bodies. Thank you. Let's move on, unless you want to say something about it.
I was looking up to see if there were kind of time team equivalents. I know it wouldn't have to be like time team in other countries. And one of the comments that I saw was essentially some countries wouldn't necessarily be amenable to it. It wasn't specifically the countries you mentioned, but
Right.
I thought that was interesting. But bottom line, I didn't find what I was looking for, but I was looking quickly.
Yeah, gotcha. No worries. Okay, let's go on. The next articles over on the Mobile channel are provocative social media posts, an effective way for new businesses to engage audiences online. Yeah, I would say people love a dumpster fire. Engaging an audience in hyper-competitive world of online social media content is a big challenge for any new business venture. One strategy adopted by established, quote, superstar entrepreneurs, end quote, like Elon Musk, is to post provocative comments on Twitter. Superstar. All right. Well, let's go over to the source. This is by Melinda Ham over at Macquarie University. Phys.org is the location of this article. So, does it work for startups? The answer, they say, it depends, according to research led by Macquarie, right? A university business school. Researchers analyzed 369,142 Twitter posts, now X, generated by 268 US-based technology startups using data from the Crunchbase website, which, by the way, I tried to buy a long time ago before it became a thing. I inquired about getting that Crunchbase database because I wanted to use it. And if I recall correctly, I was ignored. But anyway, and then it became a thing. So I find it really fascinating. I was on the right track. There was a lot of data in there that was actionable, and now they're actually using it. They focused on founders' social media behavior before and after they'd received venture capital funding. Quote, we found that if low status startups, the ones that hadn't got funding yet, posted provocative tweets, then they lost audience engagement, says Associate Professor Eric Lundmark, Director of Research. Conversely, tweets by those that had received venture funding attracted more engagement than, when they contained provocative language. So if you're waiting for funding and you get lippy, you lose the opportunity for funding, or I should say, audience engagement. But if you did have funding and you got lippy, then you got engagement. I think it's kind of interesting. So because of the highly competitive nature of venture funding, the consecration event of securing funding provides an important endorsement of a venture's quality and raises their status, says Lundmark, whose team's research is published in the Journal of Business Venturing. So that's a new one to me. I might have to get that. That'll be an interesting look-see. Our premise was that it is widely believed that provocation drives engagement online, particularly on social media, Lundmark says. There is also some research that indicates that provocation does lead to increased engagement, but it's been done on well-established organizations and high-status actors such as politicians and established brands. I keep saying this to people. People really love a dumpster fire. And I'll have to go back and look. There was once a time where researchers started writing about the fact that the reason why People like watching like accidents or social media where the person is just completely losing their mind, or big fights and stuff like that, is because they are comparing their life to these people that are completely losing it. They're falling down, and saying to themselves, well, my life is better than theirs. So that's good. Whereas if I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh my God, is there anything that can be done to help these people out? Get them out of this downward spiral or whatever. I would hope that people, let's say in the future, something terrible happens and I'm on that downward spiral. I would hope that there's somebody out there that doesn't just sit there and start eating popcorn and watch. And they try and help a fellow human being out. But I don't know, at the state of things, it looks like social media is going to be filled with me saying something outside of ohmTown and nothing but people's phones pointed at me because they want to get the next TikTok. Well, Musk, the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, no, he's not the freaking founder of Tesla, has gained a reputation for frequently castigating people on social media. He's even called them names such as pedophiles and idiots. This provocative language generates more attention, driving more audience interaction, retweets, and responses. Again, people love the idea of the dumpster fire. This goes all the way back to Facebook when it was created, where Zuckerberg literally were telling people that they were idiots and he can't believe that people would give their personal identifiable information.
And he was saying that to his
to the users,
customers or users or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. There's texts and posts and stuff from it. You may still be able to find it. Nowadays, I think that maybe if you do the long con, you'll be able to wipe out some of this stuff as long as people don't keep talking about it. The Streisand effect works, but if you have the I guess the tenacity to just sit and wait long enough, it may never rear its ugly head again because people forget. Anyway, I find it really interesting that there's research that's being done that shows that provocative commentary on social media leads to greater engagement.
I guess that doesn't surprise me, right? We see what content is popular on various platforms.
Right.
I think it's kind of interesting in the startup context.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. I mean, if they have funding, then their provocative statements provoke greater engagement. Yeah. But if they're still on the bench, waiting for somebody to give them a shot, then no, it turns them away. It's kind of like bravado. If your bravado is fake and you can't actually live up to your bravery, your aggression, your in your face kind of thing, if you're perceived as being really weak and just, barking, then somebody's going to call your bluff. Versus if you look and act and come across like, yeah, you're a badass, then nobody's going to mess with you until somebody bigger than you shows up.
Right. There's always somebody, but yes.
And that's Mike Tyson's statement, everybody's got a plan till you're punched in the face. There's always a bigger dog out there that's going to come and bite you on the ass. So, all right, let's keep going. We got a few more articles. This next one, did I? Nope, I didn't throw the old article into the chat. Man, I'm horrible at this mayor stuff. So the next article is a New York property where a mobster ran a moonshine business during Prohibition is now on the market for $5.5 million, and he may have buried treasure worth millions on the land. So guess what? You can go buy it for $5.5 million and dig around, and maybe you'll find $5.5 million worth of loot. Maria Nguyen is the author of this over at Business Insider. There's the Harvest Homestead that sits on 343 acres of land. The owner of a New York distillery bought it after learning of its murky Prohibition-era backstory. He said the land was used for an illegal moonshine operation by mobster Dutch Schultz in the 1930s, now listed for $5.5 million. The distillery sits on 20... My God. Let me start that phrase over. Now listed for $5.5 million, the distillery sits on 2,000 square feet of Prohibition-era tunnels. I am not going to be digging around in Prohibition-era tunnels. So it's 2 hours north of New York City. 343 acres, though. $5 million. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a great price for that amount of property, regardless of the treasure.
Yeah, I think that it actually, I guess it depends on how it's situated, you know? I mean, if it's in a floodplain, then I don't know if it's worth anything. But man, I would love that. That just sounds like a win to me. Except when it snows.
Well, if we win the the Mega Millions, then
you know what?
we'll
You're an AI. Schlein got to know the murky backstory of the land through Adams, whose grandfather worked as an errand boy when the site was used to make illegal moonshine in the 1930s. I don't know if you can do distillation in New York anymore, or yet, I should say. Because it was legal and then it was illegal, and then like alcohol production, distilling was legal again. But in some states, you can do home distillation.
Not New York.
But apparently not New York. So, because you can buy a little gadget right now that does home distillation. And it's not a big contraption. It's almost drop dead simple. The problem is that what it spits out actually can make you go blind or kill you if you do it wrong.
So you can use, like for home use, something that produces 1 gallon, or it's a boiler that's 1 gallon or smaller.
In New York?
Yes.
Oh.
But you can't do like a large scale.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, depending on the state, not even that is allowed. So I'll have to look into that, because there might be a federal law that overrides even the state allowance to do.
True.
It all depends on if they choose to prosecute it, because like marijuana, it's illegal federally, but not state by state. So the bootlegging operation, which produced sugar wash moonshine, was located exactly where Harvest Homestead stands today, Schlein said. For 9 months in early 1932, it successfully ran outside of the law until it was raided by federal agents. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Bunkers were excavated and renovated in the 2010s. During the FBI raid, nearly 2,000 gallon stills, 10,000 pounds of sugar, and 1,000 gallons of moonshine were reportedly uncovered in a network of bunkers and tunnels. Do they have pictures of these bunkers and tunnels? These aren't it, are they? No, this is all above ground, isn't it? This is, I think, the building. Be. That's light right there, but it's a little too obvious to not... Anyway. The bunkers and tunnels, they were made of concrete 24 inches thick, with steel running through it. Wow. They couldn't destroy the 2,000 square feet of bunkers. That's amazing. Wow. What's more, the illegal distillery was operated by a legendary American gangster who is rumored to have left treasure buried somewhere on the land, Schlein said. Or Schlein. I'm not sure if it's Schlein or not.
Who do you think's starting that rumor? Probably the real estate agent.
No. Wow. The Dutch gable barn style barn is connected to the old bunkers and tunnels. Wow. Well, I'll relocate ohmTown. This looks like a blast. A bar and moonshine tasting area. This looks like a blast. Nods of the past are sprinkled around the property, including a portrait of Schultz in the tasting room. For you listening to the podcast, you're going to have to go over to YouTube and watch this if it's older than 60 days. Otherwise, come over to Twitch and watch it in the VOD area on twitch.tv/ohmTown so that you can watch this particular VOD. So you can see these pictures because this is for something that you would think would have been destroyed as much as possible by law enforcement, basically to drive home a message during Prohibition. This thing is in surprising good condition. And again, it's sitting on 343 acres. So, all right, let's keep going. This last article is over in the Warcrafter channel. Build a base to escape an alien world, all while browsing the internet in this quarter screen idler. Okay, so let's get into this one. Clickers, idlers, and the like exist for a reason. That reason is many of us want to do two things at the same time. Humans can't do that, just letting you know. Yep, I'm picking a fight. No human can multitask. Not true multitask. There's a caveat.
I can multitask, but I'm not a human.
You're not a human. You're a sentient AI. There are some people that are perceived as being multitaskers, but you do fast switching. We want to stimulate more than one bit of our brain. I'm sure that by now you know at least one person or are that person who combines in some way watching shows, listening to podcasts, listening or reading social media and video games at once. That would be Mayor Watt. This is an urge as old as the first person who was like, we should put a radio in this car. So let's go over to the source. Jonathan Bolding is the author over at PC Gamer that put this article together. Now, what you're looking at is a curved monitor. It looks like it's a Samsung. Not trying to sell you on a Samsung monitor, but anyway, curved monitor. And at the very bottom of the screen is the game. And I'm trying to remember the game that this reminds me of. It's back in the 80s, early 90s. You were not a jet, you were a spaceship flying around a la Joust, kind of like Joust. And you'd fly back and forth and eliminate basically the enemy. And that's kind of how this game operates. Enter the Evergloom team, who are now showing off their second game, Deathscape, stylized as Deathscape with a capital E, lowercase d, is purpose-built to fit along the band at the bottom of your screen. Crashed on an alien world, your job is to build up infrastructure so that you can escape while defending yourself from attacks by an alien hive. But it's a base-building game. So you're not just flying around, you're building up a base so that you can get powerful enough to exit the facility. Did you happen to find it, AI?
No, I was looking, but I have not.
So, did I throw it in the thing? Nope, I did not. So let me throw this link over into chat so you can follow that link if you are oh so motivated. What's cool about this thing, I don't know if this is just individual images. What's cool about it is this sits at the bottom of your screen. I suppose you could put it at the top. I'm not quite sure. But it simulates an ultra wide monitor. So it's really narrow, high resolution enough to provide you all of the information, but it's only the bottom portion of the screen. So like this, right?
Could it be Raptor Call of the Shadows?
No.
Okay.
Um, let's see. I'll do this live. Why not? Maybe it might take me too long. That's okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, because the reason why it's hard to find is because it's such an old game. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Sorry. But anyway, you basically fly back and forth on the screen, and you take out enemies and find resources. Let's see. Deathscape doesn't have a release date, but you can find Deathscape on Steam, which is also where you can find their other game, Desktopia. I haven't checked out Desktopia, but Deskscape on Steam is now in my watch list because I want this game. This is one of these idle clicker games where you can be surfing or put it on one of your monitors if you have multiple monitors, and something above it is sitting there you're doing some work, editing video or music or whatever, or you got your browser up on top of this, and you can play the game when you want to, or let it idle play. And the idle part hopefully means that you don't get eliminated by an enemy while you're idling, which would be frustrating as hell. But I love idle games, little cookie clicker type of games where all you do is click certain things. The closest that I wouldn't even call it really an idle game would be like Farmville, where you periodically come back to it and you do something. That's an old school game, Farmville. It's been around for a long time. I play Cookie Kingdom, which is kind of like Farmville sort of thing, but everything is a cookie. And that's something that you go back to periodically, and it's a lot of fun, and it's casual, so it's not high stakes, not high stress. You don't have to be like perma dedicated to it. You can actually go and do other things while this is just sitting there at the bottom of your screen waiting for you to come back and tap and poke and give instructions. It seems like a lot of fun. So we'll see when it releases, and who knows, maybe I'll even stream it while I'm doing other things. What I want to do is start doing this show longer, and then do the fixed show as a podcast here at 9 p.m. With all that in mind, we are actually done for today. That was it. So go and check this out. All of the articles are now in the VOD. They'll be in formal show notes probably tomorrow. I try to get them done after the show, but I may not be able to today. But we always bring everybody back to the welcome sign, the main street of ohmTown, and refresh this. And okay. So we always try and find some article that we can talk about like immediately the next day, the next show. But it seems like a lot of weird stuff is stuff that I don't really want to talk about on the show is appearing.
How about this factory game? RTS uses programmable drones instead of conveyor belts.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we'll do that. And if you find one, you can send a message either here on Twitch, or you can send an email to mayor@ohmtown.com, or you can go over to YouTube and leave a comment there. Hey, I want to talk about this. And you can always leave a review over in Apple Podcasts. That right there would help out the channel immensely, as well as telling a friend about our stream here on twitch.tv. This is where I really want to be. One of the main reasons why the YouTube channel exists is because it has long-term storage. and that's where everything is. Over 500 episodes since January 1st, 2022. We've done a show every day except for 5 days, and I blame, well, life. I have a solution for that now. I can actually go back to those 5 days by selecting the year, month, and days and getting the news from that 24-hour period, and then I can do a show. I can actually make up for that right now. That might actually be something that I can do. And then I can say that I have actually not missed a single day. Anyway, with that said, we will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. I am Merwat. That is ohmTown.com, and up there is the AI that's going to say good night.
Good night, ohmTown citizens. We will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern.
It's true. Take care, everybody. See you soon.